Power Women podcast. For your career and your life, no matter what business you're in.
Hello and welcome to the second episode in our We Celebrate season of the Northern Power Women podcast. I'm your host, Simone Roche, and we are now just 1 week away from the Northern Power Women Awards, which takes place on the 21st of March. I'm not sure I've mentioned this, but it is the largest celebration of gender equality in Europe, where we unearth amazing change makers and trailblazers who are shifting the dial and, importantly, using their power for good. Every week, I'll be chatting to some of the incredible role models in the Northern Power Women community, and today I am joined by no one other than Barbara Bray MBE, getting a habit collecting our MBEs, who has joined the Power List of 2022. He's a PhD researcher in healthy aging nutrition. I need that. Barbara's work delivers food safety in food supply chains and nutrition strategy for businesses, alongside leadership and educational roles in her public engagement activities. Her leadership roles have included Director of the Oxford Farming Conference and representing the private sector mechanism in speeches at the UN Committee for Food Security. Barbara is also a fellow and committee member of the IFST, as well as a trustee of the Nutrition Society. Back in 2019, Barbara was awarded an MBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours for services to food nutrition. And Barbara is currently researching Diet to Protect Health in doctoral training programme at the Centre for Public Health at the Queen's University Belfast, where I'm speaking to you today, I think, in that area. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you very much, Simone. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you today.
Oh, no, I'm delighted to be having this conversation. So tell us, let's go back to 2014 and what was it what was that light bulb moment that went, you know what, I'm going to set my own business up?
It's one of those things that I think I always knew I wanted to do, but never had the bravery. And like with most things, it takes a monumental shift or a complete change in your circumstances for you to get that bravery from somewhere. It was always there, but having gone through a restructure in the business I was in and getting the opportunity to take voluntary redundancy was the only invitation that I needed. I now had no excuses. It was do it or die. So I went for it, and I haven't looked back. I think it gave me the push that I needed, because I knew that business as usual, I couldn't carry on doing the same thing. I wasn't getting fulfillment from it, and I felt that my talents lay with helping people in a different way. So that's why I set up my business, and being able to use my technical knowledge, but also the skills that I had gained from working with people and understanding that a lot of problems come from people not having their expectations met or not understanding what's required of them. And it's not actually skills and technical detail that's the first priority. It's getting people in the right headspace to make the right decisions and learn and reach out for what they need to know.
And it's just occurred to me that, you know, I set my own business up in 2014 too. And I think you talked about the word bravery there. I think for me, it was never clear. This was something I was never going to do. I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. You know, I didn't think I was brave enough, but I guess that's what we all need, isn't it? We all need that. And because we come to it, we learn skills and knowledge throughout every step of our journey, and no one piece of experience goes wasted, I don't think, but we definitely don't come to the table with a guidebook on how to set up and run a business. So where did you research and find your information about setting up the business?
At the time I was looking to do this, I was also based at the University of Chester, so that's where I was doing my Masters in Human Nutrition, and they had a business incubation set up at that university at the time. I don't know if it's still running, but it was almost like a checklist of everything you needed and all the facilities in one location. So it was almost like the lazy person's way of doing business. I literally had to rock up to the Riverside Centre, say, I want to set up my own business. And they rolled out all of these things that I had to do, from hooking me up with an accountant and a business advisor and a space to work. It was all under one roof. So they made it as easy as possible. And like I say, I never looked back, because the setup was right from the very beginning. And in terms of research, yes, I had to do a little bit of research into my particular sector, but the actual nuts and bolts of setting up a business, I had a lot of hand-holding.
We talk about mentoring a lot. You know, we're big advocates and fans of mentoring in any form. You know, in our Levelling Up progress report at the end of last year, you know, we wanted to get the country mentoring in whichever form that looked like. So how did this impact on you? Was that there and available for you at the start?
It was, like I say, with the service that I accessed, I was able to get a business mentor. But then I realized mentoring is not just about one thing, is it? You need a range of people supporting you. For me, that's having an advocate. So that's somebody who puts you forward for things or lets you know what's available, a sponsor, somebody to help you get there, as well as a mentor. And I think having one mentor isn't, the be all and end all. I think you should really have more than one. And I was lucky in that I had a business mentor, but I also had somebody who understood my sector who I could go to. So a lady who I'd worked with years ago, who was just there on the end of the phone and somebody to bounce ideas off and be a real source of support for me. And I've changed mentors over the years. I've had quite a few, but you need the right mentor for the right stage that you're at as well. I think that's very important. And also I've been a mentor to mentees, which has been brilliant because you learn again when you do that too.
And I know that's really important for you, is advocating for women in your sector, particularly at the start of their career. Tell us about what are the things that you are generous with your time and what you get involved with and why it's important.
Well, obviously I have to talk about Northern Power Women, being a mentor for them. That was brilliant last year when I got my mentee. We had such fun. But within the organisations that I work with on a voluntary basis, so for example, Nutrition Society, supporting people coming through that process, especially around the things like going to conferences and getting the courage to speak up in public and present work, that type of thing. But also from the other organisations. So when I was a director of the Oxford Farming Conference, it was about looking a bit wider than our usual remit. So going to universities or going to organisations who wouldn't normally put people forward for things like the Scholars Programme that we run, and making sure that they knew that we were welcoming, and it might not be a sector that you've looked at before. I think agriculture is not particularly an obvious choice for a lot of people. So it's about making sure that people who were interested in food and interested in careers, we were welcoming them with open arms and saying, yes, it's for women. Yes, it's for people of colour. Yes, it's for people who probably have felt excluded in other areas, but we're here and we want to encourage you to get involved in this fantastic sector.
And were you identifying role models out there? Because, wouldn't want to assume, but this sector, is this a sector that is ethnically diverse?
Not at all. I think it's a difficult one, because if you think of agriculture, pure agriculture in farms and how the system is structured, it tends to be a career that you are born into. So, whether you're in this country or I think where my family are from Ghana, people tend to be sons and daughters of farmers, and it's very rare that new entrants come in. So if you're in a particular geographical location, chances are you will inherit your land and you'll inherit your business. Whereas in other business sectors, you buy a business or you start a business. So by the very nature of that, then the sector in the UK is not very ethnically diverse, because it's been handed down through the last 5 or 6, 10 generations or something. And from that point of view, I guess if people are growing up in the same location, going to school with the same types of people, getting married in the same communities, it doesn't make it diverse at all for lots of different reasons. And coming in as somebody, I grew up in County Durham, which is quite a rural area. Even though I grew up in a market town, I was in that environment, so it was an easy path for me to tread because I was surrounded by people I already knew who were doing that type of thing. But I think if you're coming in from somebody who's lived quite a city lifestyle and you've had an education that hasn't included food and agriculture, you wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards it. So it's about putting those opportunities in front of people, because the barriers aren't necessarily difficult barriers to cross. It's more about building relationships with communities who are in that space. And once you have those relationships, people are welcoming. But obviously, if you never get introduced to those sorts of people in those locations, then it makes it quite hard.
And this is our We Celebrate season. And we talked about you received your MBE in 2019, which I can imagine was totally thrilling and really important to you. But, it is really important that we are signalling these great recognitions and achievements to other men and women of colour, and really role modelling around that. This is so important, isn't it? Why is it even more important now that we high five those achievements?
What I've realised quite late in life was the importance of visibility. And I remember my dad telling me a story about when he was at university and, he was involved in quite a lot of things. And there was a photograph that needed to be taken of his department. And at the time he was busy and he said he never made it onto that photograph. And now that's become quite an iconic photograph because there are now some really famous people who've been celebrated and lauded by the university about their achievements. And you can look back and see it was only white people on that photograph, and he kicks himself to this day that he didn't show up. And I truly believe that the future is in the hands of those who do show up. And I've learned from that story in that being visible encourages other people. And I remember when I received my MBE thinking, actually, this is not about me. This is representing a community. This is about showing people what can be done and giving them hope and encouragement and inspiration and all the things I hadn't realised that was representing to so many people. So many people were so proud of seeing me get that award, and I had no idea of the support that was out there in the community, and not just my own community, a wider community of people who I hardly even knew. It was just so wonderful, and it continues to be something that advocates for all sorts of people, to encourage them and help them see what can be done and how you can help other people as well. So that visibility for me is absolutely key.
And it's using your power for good. And I think it's almost a stepping stone into almost going, gosh, I've done this and I've achieved this. But naturally, Barbara, you just talked about we, and and actually it's really important that, one of the sole reasons for creating the awards was to encourage people to high five themselves and to take themselves out of the comfort zone. In last week's podcast, I got my team on the podcast, and I have to sort of grab them in there, not quite kicking and screaming because everyone's different, but it's really important to have that audible and visible celebration and recognition. And how good are you high fiving yourself?
Oh, that's why I have a mentor and a coach, because they remind me to do that, and my supervisor as well. Look back at the things that you've achieved and be grateful and thankful for what you've been able to do, but also acknowledge it. And I think by doing that, it helps give other people permission to do the same. I think it's very easy to end up in that culture trap of just getting your head down and doing a piece of work and not celebrating your successes. But I think that is really important. So I'm on that journey as well, about learning to celebrate my successes too.
Oh, and please keep doing that. And I love that whole your dad's story about showing up. We talk about having seats at the table, but actually show up for the photograph, which we know that on awards day in a week's time, we're going to have Manchester Central full to bursting, 1,000 people attending, and we get everyone on stage at the end to have that visible recognition. It's massively important. So, Barbara, I'm so delighted you are on this year's Power List 2022. Thank you so much for your ongoing support, advocacy, your mentoring. We're going to be exciting because we're opening the spring cohort of Northern Power Women mentoring virtual program as well. So we hope to get you involved. But thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for continuing to be awesome.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Simone. Take care.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in today. Please do tell your pals and your friends about our podcast. Reach out to us on socials at North Power Women on Twitter and Northern Power Women on all our other social media, or drop us an email at podcast@northernpowerwomen.com. Join us on Monday the 21st of March, Awards Day, when I'll be joined by another force of nature from the Northern Power Women community. My name is Simone Roche. You've been listening to the Northern Power Women podcast, a What Goes On Media production.